Negativity bias is a psychological phenomena where we treat negative events as more important than positive ones. For example, you're having a great day at work. Things are going well, you listen to an excellent radio show or podcast on the commute to work, but then a coworker makes an offhanded remark that you just find irritating. Then you find yourself stewing over those words for the rest of the day. And then when you eventually get home and someone asks how your day was, your reply is that it was terrible, even though it was overall pretty good, except for that one negative incident. This is a pretty common occurrence with people, and research shows that it's most likely just rooted in basic evolution. The tendency to pay attention to bad things and overlook the good things could have been literally a matter of life and death. And those who are more attuned to danger and paid more attention to bad things were just more likely to survive. And the basics of negativity bias is that when presented with two equally important pieces of information, you'll treat the negative one as more important, even if by an objective measure, they're exactly the same in importance. This is why bad things tend to grab our attention. Studies show that negative news is more likely to be perceived as truthful, since negative information draws greater attention. It's seen as having more validity. If you've ever seen someone say they're just giving their honest opinions, or they're just a very truthful person, it's almost always followed by a negative opinion or a negative statement. Because in most colloquial English language, the term being real is synonymous with pointing out negative flaws. And of course, if you don't believe me, I'll have actual links to scientific studies in the video description that you can read yourself. And a great article would summarize it for you if you don't.
This is so, I mean, I already knew this, but I guess most people know this, but like our whole world is basically shaped by the fact that we memorize negative stuff more than positive stuff. And it's kind of sad when you think about it, but that's just how we humans are, right? Like it's like, for example, when a online personality complains about like negative comments, a lot of people are like, come on, just ignore the negative comments. You get like so many positive comments all the time. Why would you care about the negative comments? And it's exactly for this very reason, right? I would say that people who are in the public eye are probably slightly better at dealing with negative comments than others because they're so used to it. But it's still, like, I would still say it's really hard to deal with so many negative comments all the time, even if the positive comments are way more, right? Like if you're an online personality, or even like, it doesn't have to be an online personality, it can also be like a, you know, like a singer or actor or whatever, you know, or like a model or whatever. And even if those kind of people get a lot of positive comments, they also do get a lot of negative comments. And it's, you know, like it's really not that easy to deal with that stuff. So whenever you see a person like complain about something negative, you shouldn't like roll your eyes and think, oh man, like this person shouldn't be complaining about negative comments. They get so much positive stuff, like blah, blah, blah. You have to think about it this way. If you, like if some random person gives you a negative comment, then you will remember that too, right? Like it will probably bother you as well. And it's not as easy as just saying, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. It's really not as simple as some people make it out to be, right? Some people just say, oh, just ignore it. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I know that I should ignore it, but that's not really how like, it's not as easy as just ignoring it, right? So that's a problem. And then another thing that I want to say regarding this fact is the fact that negativity gains more attention basically everywhere. When you're a streamer or a YouTuber or a content creator that focuses on negative stuff, you gain more viewers probably. Like it's much easier to gain more views and more traffic with negativity than it is to gain more traffic with positivity, which is a little bit unfortunate. But it is what it is, right? Like it's actually a bit sad. What I mean is like people focusing on negative stuff or like drama. Like there's people who built their whole career on drama. Just like, you know, talking about drama, creating drama. Like lots of content creators even purposely create drama. Like they make it up. lots of things aren't even like true. Lots of people like literally just make up an issue that isn't even an issue just to get like more people to watch their content, which is kind of sad. But that is just how it is, right? Because people like drama, people focus on negative stuff, people just like that stuff, right? Which, you know, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about that, basically. People love being negative because they get attention. Yeah. Like, for example, when someone comes to my Twitch chat and says, lol, you suck, right? Then what do they gain from this? Probably attention, right? If someone comes into my stream and says, lol, you suck, before, like, if my moderators wouldn't instantly ban them, then some people would maybe answer to them and be like, what do you mean she sucks? And then you like talk back to them or whatever. And then they have attention. That's what they were striving for in the first place, right?
I have two main types of videos over there. The top 10 best of and the top 10 worst of. And if I take the numbers of those videos, average it out, remove the outliers in the top and bottom 5% for some of the best possible data we can get. The premium stuff. The kind of numbers that would make your statistics teacher proud. The worst of videos perform 3 times better on average. And in statistical terms, that's ridiculously significant. It's not something as low as like a 5% difference or even a more moderate 25% difference. It's a 200% difference in views. Negative videos just get more attention because people are more likely to click on them. And then YouTube rewards those videos by recommending them more because people are clicking on them. And the attractive topics will just keep drawing in more views thanks to being recommended.
But what are you going to do about it, right?
Which just kind of repeats the cycle. The YouTube algorithm has a system of where the rich get richer, and you can't get much richer than making a negative topic video. Although I will say, there are diminishing returns negativity, but for the most part that doesn't matter, and the benefits outweigh the negatives to the point that you could legitimately just make a channel dedicated to only covering negative topics and perform pretty well. Now, I'm sure many of you can think of a couple of channels or WoW fan sites that are very negative with their opinions on the game, and they get lots of views because of psychology and the YouTube algorithm rewarding those opinions more than the more moderate, neutral opinions. And to an extent, I have no problem with this. Criticism itself is not bad, and making negative videos isn't inherently bad either. If it was, I wouldn't make so many of them myself. Really, it kind of just goes into the specific kinds of criticisms. Some kinds of criticism is just inherently better than others, and some of it can even be downright toxic. Let's take a look at a post from a developer from another video game community, Paradox. Before closing, I'd like to note a few things on the subject of giving feedback. When I first started at Paradox, the direct line between community and developers was a major plus for me, because I like the idea of talking to the community without having to run every post past 3 different marketing departments first. However, this kind of direct community access comes at a heavy cost for us. As many of you have noticed, we have gotten a little sparse in these forums in the last few months,
negative bits.
or even years.
Ow,
the reason for this is that often we do face a debate culture that is not enjoyable to take part in, where it is taken as a given that the devs are either lazy or incompetent, and where everything we do is viewed through that lens. Not only is it incredibly demoralizing to spend months of your life creating something, only to see the people you made it for tear it to shreds, it is also a debate that gives no one anything. We aren't paid to wade through pages of abuse to find a few nuggets of useful feedback, and so the feedback is not acted on. A lot of you have access to sources and languages we don't speak or have studied some detail that we aren't aware of. Such feedback is very useful. Just a few weeks ago, someone sent me a plan of the Turkish Railway in 1936 taken from an old Turkish book. So I was able to use that update to the Turkish Railway setup at GameStart. We're not looking for fawning adoration, although we will certainly accept it, or a forum in which our decisions can't be discussed with a critical eye. We want to have your feedback, but there is no point to it if it can't be delivered with a minimum of respect for each other. If you want to have a forum where developers are willing to go answer your questions, then it is also your responsibility to build a place where we feel welcome, and where we can disagree in a productive and professional manner. It costs you nothing to assume that we are acting in good faith. None of us wake up in the morning to go to work in order to do a bad job.
This is literally something I say so many times. The amount of times I tell people when they're like really negative about something, I literally say that it's in everyone's interest to make the game good, right? Because why would they try to make the game bad on purpose? Like, why would they try to make WoW bad for you to not enjoy, right? Like, it makes no sense. Why would they purposely try to do that? Sometimes they try to make something good, but then it turns out not so good. But they were acting in good faith, right? They wanted it to be good, and they assumed it would be good, and then it ended up not being good. Which, of course, that happens, but they didn't purposely try to make it bad from the get-go. That's just common sense. People don't purposely try to make a game bad. Like, because how do they make money? How do they earn money? How does it work? They get money by people liking the game and playing it, right? So why would they purposely try to make something not good for you to not enjoy? It's like, it makes no sense. Asmongold is sure to do it on purpose. Well, I think Asmongold most of the time is pretty reasonable. Maybe not reasonable, but like logical. Because I don't think, like, Asmongold is actually pretty smart. Yeah? I think Asmongold is pretty smart. And when he has certain takes, he might be like exaggerating. But most of the time his takes are like good, and he's not illogical about it, you know? Like, he doesn't say, oh, Blizzard sucks and they purposely make the game bad. Like, like that's not something Asmongold says, right? If Asmongold has criticism of a decision that Blizzard or the developers make, then it usually is constructive. Usually, you know, like whenever he says something, he also comes up with solutions the way he thinks it should have been done. I'm not saying that Asmongold is like always right, but whenever he has something negative to say about something that Blizzard does or that is being done in WoW, then he usually is being constructive about it. If every negative comment would be like Asmongold's thought process and comments, then we wouldn't have this issue at all. I don't think Asmongold is like overly like negative in a sense that he just brings negativity and no proper like criticism or feedback, right? So I don't think Asmongold is like the issue. It's like being like people that are negative without any proper logical like reasoning behind it. Those are like a bigger problem than Asmongold itself, right? It's totally fine to be negative or to have criticism about something, but I think that's not what this dev is talking about, right? This dev, like if you were listening to this video, this dev is basically just asking for respect. He's not saying, hey guys, please don't give me any negative feedback. He's saying, hey guys, please just don't call me a dumb and stupid person that is bad at his job, right? Because the amount of people disrespecting devs is actually just staggering, and it's sad because those people, they're just trying to do their job, and they're trying to do the best with what they're given, right? Obviously, like they're not trying to make the game bad. So like giving the devs more respect and giving proper feedback, that would go a long way. Like that would go a really long way if people would just be a little bit more respectful, you know? Only issue is that due to the sheer amount of viewers Asmon has, whatever his opinion is then shared amongst a large amount of people, regardless of it being good or not. Not necessarily his fault though, just how media works. No, I get that. Like, it is totally true that if someone has a negative opinion about something, then it is basically, like, you're basically manipulating your followers, your community, even if it's not necessarily like willingly. For example, sometimes, let's say there's a bunch of people who don't have an opinion about something. Like conduit energy is a really good example. I'm certain that there's a huge portion of the player base that does not care about conduit energy. The fact that it's there or that it's not there, they don't care, right? But as soon as someone they look up to says conduit energy sucks, then they maybe adopt that opinion and also think conduit energy sucks, even though they themselves never had an issue with it or don't have an opinion about it, right? So you're like manipulating your like community to have a negative opinion about something that they didn't have a negative opinion about before you talked about it, right? Doesn't mean that conduit energy is good, because it still sucks, even if you didn't have an issue with it. but it's still like spreading more negativity than maybe existed before, right? So that is totally true, that people like content creators and streamers, YouTubers, whatnot, they are definitely spreading, like if they say something negative about the game, then it creates like a bigger negative opinion among the like player base than it maybe did before. Also, like stuff that Asmongold says is probably the same. Like I'm certain that there's a lot of viewers of Asmongold that maybe share Asmongold's opinions and spread them around to others, even though they never even had an issue about that stuff before, right? And it's fine to some extent, as long as the people who are sharing their opinion to others afterwards are also logical about it and actually take all of the points. Because sometimes I say something on my stream and then people only take a portion of what I said and spread it around without getting the full opinion or without getting the full thing that I said, which then creates a problem because they then spread something that I technically did say, but not, like you're not sharing the full context of it, right? And that is probably also something that happens with negative opinions. When, let's say, someone says conduit energy sucks, right? And if you only spread conduit energy sucks, but you don't spread why, like if you don't spread the opinion on why it sucks and what the solutions would be, then that's like a pointless opinion to have, right? What are you gonna do with like if you're you're a developer, right? And you have an issue that you solve with conduit energy, right? And then someone tells you conduit energy sucks. Well, what are you gonna do with that, right? What are you gonna do with this opinion? This person doesn't say why it sucks. They don't come up with a solution for it. They don't have like, there's no context. There's no like opinion, no constructive like feedback, nothing, right? So if you only share that single like thought, then it doesn't help the devs or it doesn't help anyone really. But yeah, so as long as people share their or like copy someone's opinion by also copying their thought process, then I would say it's fine.
Now, on an unrelated note, let's play a fun little game. Let's go over to the WoW forums and type in one little phrase, followed by pretty much anything. And that phrase is, why does Blizzard hate blank? The fun thing about this game is that no matter what you type in for that blank, you'll find something on the WoW forums. Let's start with an easy one. Why does Blizzard hate the Alliance? Now let's try, why does Blizzard hate the Horde? Now let's try, why does Blizzard hate Night Elves? Why does Blizzard hate battle pets? Why does Blizzard hate trains? Each time you're bound to find a thread or two about even the most niche topics. And there's a good chance someone is 100% convinced that Blizzard just hates that particular thing.
Why does Blizzard hate
Now, this
trains?
is just a fun little game that was mentioned to me by another YouTuber who doesn't make WoW videos, and definitely has nothing to do with the current topic. So, getting back on topic, constructive criticism in the negativity. There's this assumption I see a lot whenever I'm reading negative posts about the game online, either on forums, Reddit threads, or just YouTube comment sections,
agreed.
since people will like to complain about the game on just random videos of mine that have nothing to do with their complaints. And a lot of the time, I see this underlying assumption that the developers themselves are purposefully trying to do a...
Completely agree that people who say X sucks without giving any argument don't help at all, but the problem is that people who give legit criticism with valid arguments are most of the time ignored too. Yeah, so you probably missed the start of this video. I'm gonna really recommend to watch this video here. I'm gonna link the whole thing, okay? He's reading a part of something that a dev said of a game when he quit. Like there's a developer who quit and then he wrote something on a forum where he basically said that a lot of people are looking at developers through a lens where they assume that the devs do everything wrong and they're idiots, right? So the majority of the feedback they get is not real feedback, but more just like insults and like overly negative stuff and disrespectful stuff, right? So this dev is basically saying that at the very start, he was reading feedback all the time and it helped him out a lot. But the longer he worked in this job, the more like overly negative feedback he has gotten. And he was basically just wasting his time reading through like 90% negative, useless feedback to only have like 10% constructive criticism that he could work with, right? Because you have to understand, these devs, when they read feedback, that's working hours, right? They're not going to read feedback in their personal, like, private time. They get paid to do like an 8-hour job or whatever. So during those 8 hours, they're not going to spend 3 hours reading through feedback that is 90% just insults and disrespectful non-feedback, right? Just to read 10% normal constructive feedback. That's what this dev said, and it makes sense, right? If you are used to not getting proper feedback at all, at least to only get very little of proper feedback, then how on earth can you justify spending time reading that all, you know? Like, how can you say that a dev should be reading feedback or dealing with feedback, or like, you know, if 90% of it or 95% of it is just like insults and disrespecting them, then they'd rather just not read any feedback at all and spend their time working on what they think is best, you know? Ignoring the 10% that matters. Yes, seems like you're not doing a job. He's literally saying they're not being paid to read feedback. A developer is not being paid to read feedback. If somehow they could miraculously filter out all the useless feedback and only read the important one, then they would probably read the feedback, right? But how would you do that? How do you filter out 95% of that negative, disrespectful bullshit that people are writing the whole time, everywhere? They can filter it out if they get in touch with top/pro players and ignore everything else. Yeah, but see, that doesn't work with, like, I would definitely say that it's probably a bit easier to get feedback or proper feedback if it's like a competitive game, right? If it's a game like League of Legends, like, I don't know, like Valorant or Counter-Strike, like any game that is in nature competitive, then you ask the pro players about their feedback and you're probably like good to go with that without having to read anyone else's feedback. But in World of Warcraft, it's not the same. You can't just ask like the high-end raiders and the high-end PvP players about stuff, because this game is vastly made for more casual players. So you can't necessarily only get the feedback from like the high-end players, because then you're not actually looking at the majority of your player base's opinions. Why can't we all just be happy? I don't think in a game like WoW everyone can be happy. Like, I think it's actually an impossibility. I don't think the WoW can ever be designed perfectly for everybody to like it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's their job to read the feedback, just filter it, just like blah blah blah. And I mean, yeah, that's not the point I'm making though. Like, the point I'm making is that people should stop being assholes to devs, right? People should just stop being like assholes. Jesus, you know, just if you play a video game and you dislike something about it, then don't threaten someone's life over it. Just like give them normal feedback, constructive feedback. Maybe they're actually gonna read it and do something about it if people don't constantly like whine and complain without any like proper like reason behind it, right? And I know people, whenever I say stuff like this, whenever I say be less negative, then people are always like, but what's the point? Like, you're not going to change the internet. Everyone is negative all the time. Yeah, okay. But it's true that the internet is not going to be like this happy place all of a sudden. But why pile onto it? Like, why does everybody have to pile onto it just because it is what it is, you know? You can just be different. Start being a little bit more positive. You know what I'm saying? You don't even have to be nice. You just have to not be an asshole. Like, you don't even have to be nice. Being nice is like over the top. That's like, you don't have to be nice. You literally just don't have to be an asshole and everything's fine. None of this stuff is supposed to be, oh, Blizzard is doing everything right kind of story. Because that's also a thing I get all the time. Whenever I say anything defending Blizzard or defending like people that work for Blizzard, then all of a sudden I'm this like evil person who is, oh, you're just being paid by Blizzard to say this stuff, like blah, 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 you know? And it's like, dude, I literally am an independent contractor that only casts for Blizzard. I can say whatever the hell I want. And if I want to say something negative about Blizzard, I can totally do that if I want to. But that's not the point. Like, I'm just not a person that randomly is overly negative or overly complaining about stuff. I do complain about things if I dislike them. Like, I totally say my opinion about things, even if it's a negative opinion. But I just say it in a normal way, you know? Like, if I have a negative opinion about something, then I just make sure that I think about it logically first. God damn it, Johnny. So whenever Blizzard does something that I disagree with, then first of all, I think about, like, why the hell did Blizzard do this? Right? Because that's the first thing that I want to understand. Because there must be a reason behind it, right? Because that just makes sense. There's no way they did this just to, like, be annoying to players. There must be a reason, right? So I try to think of a reason behind what they're doing, and I might still dislike the decision or whatever it is, but at least if you understand why they're doing it, it might make more sense to you, and it might be less of a, like, negative thing if you understand it, right? For example, if they do something that you personally hate because you're I don't know, let's say you're like a mythic raider or whatever, yeah? And Blizzard does something that is annoying to you as a mythic raider. But then when you logically think about it, it makes sense for like most of the more casual players, right? And it's good to them. Like if it's good for like a casual player, that change, whatever change it is, then you must think, well, okay, this sucks for me and I hate it, but they're not trying to make me suffer. They're doing this because it is a positive thing for a more casual player, right? So now I still hate the fact that it is the way it is, but at least I understand why. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, these people just hate me and they hate their player base and they want the game to be shitty, you know? At least I understand why they're doing stuff, which still doesn't make you like the thing, right? I mean, this still doesn't change the fact that you dislike it. At least you understand that it's not out of spite to their player base or whatever, you know? Yeah, Ian, that is very true.
Being a developer on the game. But they do it because they're very passionate about it. Or at least the game design itself. And game design is very complicated, and you don't always want to give players exactly what they want.
Welcome back.
That was one of the main arguments as to why people wanted Classic WoW. To remove all the conveniences that Blizzard gave players because they asked for them.
Yeah.
So the underlying assumption that all negative traits in the game are done because the developers are malicious just seems wrong, and it's more likely they're just trying new things and just not really hitting the mark. That's where the quote comes in, with everyone assuming the worst intentions of all game designs. And the example I gave with the Covenant campaign is the real one I found on the internet, from a prominent source too. I will say though, that bad feedback like this is thankfully not very prevalent in popular YouTubers at least. I think Asmongold, for example, does a great job with giving constructive criticism. He's one of the biggest WoW critics and is very vocal about his dislikes of certain parts of the game, but does so in a constructive manner without assuming ill intention by the developers, whether you agree with or like the guy or not. I personally disagree with some of his opinions on the game, but that's because everybody plays and cares about different things in the game, which is a good thing to keep note of when getting all of your criticism from only one source. So, let's take two statements. One of them is that the developers only designed the game in a way to increase engagement metrics. The other, that the developers designed the game in a way so that players will have fun. The statement on the left is a negative opinion, and the statement on the right is a positive one. At first glance, the statement on the left seems more true because it's negative, whereas information about the subject is pretty equal. It's about just as much information that players have access to, which would suggest either one being the case, with probably a little bit more information pointing towards the second opinion. However, if you state the first opinion, no one will question your sources, and in fact, you'll be hailed for telling it like it is. If you quote the second opinion, people will immediately respond with hesitance, and probably ask how you know this, or at the very least question the validity of that statement. Even though, objectively speaking, we have about as much information on both of them being true. Although, having one of the opinions will have you being called a truth teller, and the other will be met with less favorable comments, generally in the variety of being a paid Blizzard shill. You have to justify your opinion more if it's a positive one, and you don't have to explain anything if it's a negative one. Now, one last point. Every year on April Fools, I make a video on my channel where I argue an unconventional point, like on how Garrosh did nothing wrong, or how Warlords of Draenor wasn't that bad of an expansion. And these videos are written in a way where I'm not telling any lies, and in fact, use nothing but facts. And the videos are presented in a way that makes the points come across as kind of reasonable. And pretty much every year the videos are a big success, and change a lot of people's minds on those topics. Just remember that a lot of news videos and scathing criticisms written on public forums present their information in the same way as my April Fool's videos. They're not telling any lies. They're bringing up good points even. It's just the conclusions are about as ridiculous as saying Garrosh is a good guy. And that's the real problem of the negativity in the World of Warcraft community. Constructive criticism is great and healthy for the game. It's just the criticism that's on the same level as my April Fool's Day videos are a little bit toxic. And to end off, here's a quote from the WoW Diary, a journal of computer game development, to kind of put it into perspective. That people have been complaining about the game since before it came out. And there isn't any more bad things about the game today than there were in the early days. We just have a lot more people on social media that can make their opinions heard louder than before. This quote is in relation to when Blizzard added the rested experience system we have today. In addition to designing the class mechanics, Rob Pardo can take much of the credit for making WoW accessible to casual users. He came up with an elegant corpse retrieval system that ameliorated the post-death anguish previous MMOs embraced. He made leveling much faster and implemented a rest system that rubber-banded the rate at which hardcore and casual players leveled. Instead of punishing players who played the game nonstop, Rob rewarded casual players for taking sensible breaks. As per usual, the fans on the forums went berserk about Blizzard turning WoW into a Care Bear game, and that we were forcing customers to limit their time. But after a week, the hysteria blew over. The public reaction was annoying, but Rob and the designers held their ground. The rest state bonus system remained after tweaking only a couple of its values.
It's actually, like, it's just really true that sometimes we players really don't necessarily know what we would like about the game.